lost direction, sets the stage to turn the page. At the raising of the curtain, I am hurting and uncertain of the parts we have played. Why must the show go on? I can't say these lines again. Why must the show go on? Must I sing this song again? Fading out of the close-up, everybody's reeling, no concealing. Your beauty is seed stealing. Violins are singing, sunset's waiting, radiating. Your entrance is breathtaking. Why must the show go on? I can't say these lines again. Why must the show go on? Must I sing this song again?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Four Wall Sunday Roundtable, episode 30. I can't believe we've done 30 of these. I'm waiting for Jeff to turn on his camera. I do not see that it's on, so hopefully I'm not doing this by myself. There he goes. All right, I'm joined once again by Jeff Kreuter. Jeff, thank you for the minor heart attack.
We've done 30, and yet still I couldn't figure out to turn my camera and my mic on. Which strangely, like in 30, I've only done that one other time, and you handle it exactly the same way. So thank you.
I know.
For bailing out. We have to come up with like a signal that no one else knows, like a word that you say when I'm being dumb. Welcome to episode 30, and hi everyone, and thanks for watching, and hello Drew. And we were on the phone earlier today, and Drew, you said something. You said that even though we did one of these last week, it feels like it's been a long time. And I totally agree. And it made me actually think that a lot of people are feeling the same way. Time sort of doesn't mean anything anymore. And there's this strange limbo state that we all sort of have. And I think maybe, hopefully, that'll shift after the inauguration. I feel no matter what side of the political spectrum one might be on, we've been a little bit stuck since the election. So maybe the 20th will allow us to move on or forward, or something maybe. Aside from all that, how are you doing? It's been a little bit of a crazy week for you for some other reasons.
My 4-month-old, my 4-year-old, myself and my wife, we all contracted COVID a couple weeks, so we've been kind of dealing with that. I had mentioned on the show as well that my mom, she's battling stage 4 cancer, and she was actually diagnosed yesterday. So, the new year, it's been rough. And, no matter what, new inauguration or not, all the stuff that's happening in 2020 is still very real this year. I thought my family and I did pretty good on trying to keep my mom safe and stuff, but it's just so unpredictable. The virus is just, no matter what, is just an unpredictable thing. So just a friendly reminder: be safe, wash your hands, and wear your mask. It's been a tough couple of days for sure.
I am so sorry you're dealing with all this, and I can't imagine how hard it is. And thank you for all the work you do for Four Wall, for the show, for everything. On top of it, it must be very difficult.
Yeah, no
and what you said is absolutely true. There has been this so-called COVID fatigue, but I don't think COVID got that message. So still have to stay as vigilant as we always were.
Yep, and also I would say the great thing about this panel as well is we've kind of had it in stages where we had educators on at the very beginning of the pandemic, we had it in the middle, towards the end of the semester, and now it's just like a whole new year, or second half of the school year. So I'm really excited to talk to this panel for sure.
Well, we've been checking in with, as you said, with teachers at steps along the way since the beginning of the shutdown. And I'm going to repeat something I said here, what I think is now over 7 months ago, strangely, maybe more. Everyone is affected by what's happening with COVID, but arguably no one more than those in all aspects of education. They've had to plan and replan and reinvent, and now, constantly trying to figure out what to do every step of the way. So, it's hard to say that anyone's had it more difficult than people again, in all aspects of education. The education panels have been some of my favorites. We have another outstanding group today. They're, again, teachers and also professionals who, in essence, balance two careers. And I'd love to hear what they have to say about all this, and let me stop talking. How about that?
All right. Yeah, let's bring him in. And I've been practicing Chris's name earlier today, Chris Barreca. He is the head of scene design at CalArts. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, everyone.
Chris.
And next is the head of scene design at the theater school at DePaul University, Regina Garcia. Regina, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Next is professor of lighting design at the College of Charleston School of the Arts, Jason Lyons. Hey, Jason.
Hi, everybody.
And last and certainly not least, professor in the practice of design at the Yale School of Drama, Jennifer Tipton. Whoops. Hello, Jennifer.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Well, we're going to jump right in, and we're going to start with Jason, since I think, Jason, you were the last one of the group to start teaching, since it's recent. We're going to go to you first. But before we talk about your work in education, can you tell us what ignited your passion for design? What was that first spark? Where did it start for you?
Oh, gosh, I feel like I've told this story 1,000 times. So I was a performer in high school, and I was, in the shows, and as part of that, we were always doing everything backstage as well. And our director at the high school at the time got me involved with a summer stock theater that wasn't far from us, and the community theater. And so I started doing a lot of tech work in both of those, doing everything: carpentry, props, lighting. And I ended up running a fall spot for a community theater production of Man of La Mancha. And I remember the finale, The Impossible Dream, the very end of the song. Everybody joins in singing, and there's a key change, and the entire cast turns towards the audience and takes a step forward. And there was just a little light cue with like a little push of the backlight. And I'm sitting in the back of the theater, and I just watched the entire audience go,
Oh, cool.
And I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to be able to create that moment. That was beautiful. And
that's amazing. That's great. Regina, how about you?
I think for me, it was 1991, Florence. I was studying. I had an opportunity to go abroad to Florence, Italy. Can you imagine? And I was still very much a fine artist. I was studying painting and sculpture. And I went to a show at La Pergola. It was 6 characters in search of an author. 6 personaggi in cerca d'autore, and it was directed by the spectacular, amazing, I didn't know at the time, Franco Zeffirelli. Mm-hmm. And I was moved. I couldn't speak Italian. Of course, I speak Spanish, and I could get away, I could understand some of the words, but not really, not at the speed in which the performance was moving. And I was just floored by the storytelling. I was floored by what's all of a sudden was there that seemingly was not before, right? Talk about lighting, talking about shaping a space for performance, and that was it. I was hooked.
Amazing. What I love is that, again, we've had so many people on the show talking about where they got started. Everyone has a different story, which is amazing to me. But Chris, it's your turn. What's your story?
Well, I could give you a lot of sparks. I'll just give you 3 quickies. One was that when I was 9 in the 1960s, on a school field trip to the old Met to see La Boheme, and with 2,000 other screaming 9-year-olds. And but in the intermissions, they raised the curtain and they let everybody watch the transitions, and you would hear all these kids erupt watching a crew of 100 moving these 30-foot high flats around as if they weighed nothing. Like the magic of what they were doing was almost as magical for us as what happened on stage. The second was also a school outing. When I was in high school, early in high school, I saw Sizwe Bonzi and the Island, Ethel Fugard's production in New York. And they were spitting orange peel and everything at me. I was like in the front row. And I've always been a political person, but it was a fabulous, fabulous performance. And I would think more than anything. And it got me into the theater. And I've since worked with Ethel, who's an amazing person to work with. The last one is, and I heard you guys earlier talking about Neil Mazzella, but I started working at Atlas Scenic Studio when I was 16, which was originally in Norwalk and then moved to Bridgeport. And Neil Mazzella I was an apprentice in the IA, and so was Neil, but he was my boss. He was the boss apprentice. And I've known Neil for a really, really long time. And for those who don't know, Neil has run one of the major, major shops in New York for
It's a great guy.
For 40 years, and he's a great person.
Yes.
I call him blood pressure medicine. When he walks in the room, I just like, Jennifer, how about you?
Yes, well, when I was in high school, I fell in love with dance. And so but I went off to college to be a physicist, an astrophysicist. I wanted to be the first person on the moon. But along the way, I did fall in love with dance again. So I went to New York to be a dancer. I became a rehearsal mistress for a dance company that danced for children, and which meant that once a week I had to sit in the audience to critique the dancers. And I looked at the bigger picture, and that was light, and I fell in love with it, and I've been in love with it ever since.
Amazing. What was that first dance company? Do you remember who it was?
The Merry-Go-Rounders.
Amazing. Chris, they don't show that anymore, right? They don't at the Met. They don't let people just watch them change the set. I imagine, right?
No, I don't think so. I don't know.
What a great thing. I mean, as you're describing that, like, of course, that's as much. I mean, that's an interesting part of the show. If I were a kid watching that, I'd want to do it also. Sorry, Drew. You were
no. I was gonna stick with Jennifer for the next question. How and when did you begin teaching?
Well, as a matter of fact, I began teaching dance when I was like 14 or 15. I taught a group of little black girls for the Phyllis Wheatley branch of the Y in Knoxville, Tennessee. My parents were both teachers, so somehow teaching has always been in my blood. I began at Yale in the 70s, but before that, I had done quite a bit of teachting.
Awesome. So it definitely runs in the family then.
Definitely.
And was there a lighting program at Yale, or were you did you start that program?
Oh, there was definitely a lighting program. Stanley McCandless, for one, and Farron Buster came out of that program, and there had been one there for quite a while.
Awesome. And Jason, I'll go to you. When did your teaching journey begin?
I've been kind of in and out of it. I started teaching a little bit right after I graduated from Purchase. I went back and I started teaching a Vectorworks class for lighting designers because at the time, there was nobody to teach it, and I had kind of forced myself to learn it because I needed to work, and that's what everybody was looking for. And so I was like, hey, I'll start doing this. It started as a seminar and then became a class. And then I started subbing in and doing Lighting 1 and Lighting 3 classes on top of that since I was there. And then coming down here to College of Charleston, I actually moved down here not thinking that I was going to be teaching. I moved my family. We moved out of New York because I found like I was traveling so much. I was barely there. We were spending a ton of money on an apartment in Midtown, and it just seemed crazy that like and we were coming down here. My family's here now, so we were coming down here to spend all of our free time. So we're like, let's just cut out the middleman. We could actually buy a house and like raise our child in an amazing place, and I can still be in New York when I need to be. And so I got down here, and they reached out to me and said, "Hey, we heard you just moved down here. Is there any chance you would be interested?" And I was like, "Sure." And that was last year. So it's been 2 years now, and now I look at it, and I'm like, "Oh God, thank God that happened when it did."
So it's like you picked a great and a bad time to start teaching.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah, definitely. Regina, what about you?
I would say in my upbringing in Puerto Rico, when I studied art, drawing, and either with pencil, charcoal, pastel, all of that, I was at the Andy Bueso studio in Puerto Rico, and he very much believed in the relationship of the mentor and mentee, or the atelier structure, which has a master craftsman at the top and assistants and students that do their work following their masters, let's say masters, feedback, recommendations, etc. So I started assisting Andy when I was in high school, and I kind of understood that relationship. And so I've always been attracted to teaching. And finally, after graduating with my MFA, I had several invitations to teach in New York at Lehman College, the Dalton School, and all of that just kind of kept me active. I think I really appreciate that relationship between professor and student until I was invited formally for a full-time position at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. This was in 2008. And now, of course, at DePaul. But it's always been part of, I guess, of my practice. Right. I teach, I do a show, I go back, I bring a couple of students into the audience. What do you think? I just love that exchange, and I don't take it for granted.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And Chris, how about you?
Well, I think I may have started teaching at Yale before Jennifer did. So I had been a music major in college and also an equity stage manager. And Jim Ingalls got me to apply to Yale. And I was originally Ben was my mentor. I was in all of those programs, but I took design for non-design majors with Michael Juergen. Mm-hmm. And after I took the class, and Michael and I hit it off, I guess because I was a performer. So, we hit it off, and Michael's a great performer. I love him dearly. And but he got really busy, and he asked me to teach design for non-design majors, which was at that time for the directors and writers. And, Ming wasn't teaching the directors and other people at that time, the dramaturgs. And what's crazy about it is that I had to think about, because I wasn't a designer. I hadn't been a visualist. So I had to think about it from my own way, because Michael didn't give me any, guidance. But all of those directors I've gone on to work with, and the dramaturgs. I started a theater with a bunch of the dramaturgs that I taught in that class, and and writers too. It goes on. But the other thing is that I was the undergraduate majors advisor, the Dramat advisor. Jennifer will know that title. I'm not sure it exists anymore, because we were always getting into trouble and lots of trouble. But I think I never thought I would be a teacher, but because of those experiences, I fell in love with helping other people figure it out.
It's like, those design classes for the directors are so important. It's like, the design appreciation.
Very much.
But I'm not sure they all take it. It's you should go around and do it every day.
They were required then.
Yeah. Chris, let's stick with you, because you just mentioned the word mentors, and our next question has to do with mentors. So you are all mentors in some cases. generation of designers or generations of designers, and certainly to the next generation of designers. Who are your mentors to you as a teacher, and if different to you as a professional? And what is something you learned from them that you still carry with you?
Well, I skipping all of my music mentors, which were super important to my development, and performance mentors, but Jerry Rojo, who Jennifer probably knows the name, other people may not. He was an American Indian designer who designed the original performance garage for Richard Schechner.
Oh yeah.
And I actually didn't take classes with Jerry. He was at UConn. I was his assistant. I was his professional assistant for years, because he figured out that I knew something about all this from my years at Atlas. I'm going to bore you how we met up, but I was his assistant for a long time. And Jerry, because he was an environmental designer, he's been an influence on me to this day, because my whole thinking about space is related to his thinking about space. We had long conversations about that. My second mentor would have to be Ming. And again, I would say, yes, I got a huge amount out of taking Ming's classes. And I was a virtual sponge, because I, again, didn't have all this background. I was surrounded by people that knew they wanted to be designers from the age of 10. And when Ming let me in, I was always, Chris is TD who wants to be designer.
Right.
I was that for years.
And here you are.
And here I am. But I love that place, because it meant that I oddly could really absorb it all. But I worked for Ming for 6.5 years.
Yeah.
And
how many people refer to Yale as that place? That's awesome.
Whoops, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You can. I can.
Oh God, yeah. Well, I could keep going. I have a lot of mentors. I think we probably all do. Every director I've worked with, every writer I've worked with has been a mentor.
We're looking for the top one or two.
Yeah, got it.
It's like Family Feud. Jason, how about you?
Well, I think you might know mine pretty well, Jeff.
I do. I think I do.
I have two, who both design-wise and in terms of teaching. The first was Bill Mincer, who I really, he taught me the idea of abstract thinking about concept and theme, and gave me a structure for how to create design. And he also said this one thing to me that has stuck with me for my entire career, which is a little silly, but I had kept turning in concepts, and he kept giving me like C's or B minuses, and I finally I presented one in class, and he went crazy for it in class and loved it, and he turned it back to me, and it was a B plus, and I went into his office afterwards, and I was like, Billy, like I don't understand. You thought this was great, this was amazing, and he was like, Jason, an A is Broadway. And I was like, God, like
I was going to say, nobody got a B plus in the class. Right? It was hard to get like anything above a B from professor. So that's that is high praise.
Yes, and I was like, okay, it was a little bitchy, but I was like, it made me say like, okay, I'm never done working. I'm always going to continue striving for whatever the next better idea is. So that was Billy, and then of course Brian McDevitt, who I studied with at school and then worked with for years. I mean, there's so much that he taught me that I can't even put into words. But one of the big lessons was really about the camaraderie of what we do. Like there's this aspect of friendship and collaboration that allows you to just find a place of comfort in the room that lets the ideas flow. And that's something that I've really felt strongly about passing on to students. There's so many stories of people in our industry exhibiting bad behavior. And allowing bad behavior, and it's one of those things that I'm like, okay, but we don't have to do that. We can find ways of working together and not have it be like this crazy, angry situation. So that was a big one, and also the idea that beauty can be uncomfortable. That was a big one for me from Brian. Was that there is, sometimes that tension is what makes a moment.
Yeah, sure. Jennifer, how about you? Who are your mentors?
Yes, well, I have one primary mentor. His name was Tom Skelton, and back once again, I was, interested in dance, and he did the lighting for many, many dance companies. And I went to him and asked if he knew somebody who could be the lighting designer for the merry-go-rounders or the lighting supervisor. And he said, yes, I do, but you have to clean up my files before you can find out. So I went to work for him sort of like a secretary. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I became his assistant. And then I learned everything I know about lighting. And really the basis of what I consider worksheets came from his instruction. Mm-hmm. And he said to me at one point, nobody likes a smartass, and that I have believed for my entire life as a lighting designer.
It's true.
Can I piggyback for Jennifer on that, just because Tom taught at Yale before Jennifer did, and
that's right.
I took his classes, and his TA would call us at like midnight and say, Tom's having class. And you'd run over at midnight. I'm not kidding. And he'd have like one class. He had just lit candles, like 1,000, not 1,000, but he lit a lot. Tom was a fabulous teacher.
Can you still do that? Can you still just like throw a class at midnight with candles? I don't know. Yeah. Jason, I think you should try it down in
I'll let you know how it goes
in year 2. Yeah. Regina, how about you? Who are your mentors?
I wanted to piggyback on Jason's comment on that quote that stays with you from your mentor. That I have one. I bumped into it the other day from 1997. My professor at NYU, and I think we're all the product of all the people that we meet along the way. And it said something about investigating the ugly and the ridiculous. Similarly to your statement about the uncomfortable and not everything has to be pretty. I think I've learned a lot about theater from the directors, similarly to some of you, specifically Rosalba Rolón and Alvan Colón Lespier at Pregones Theater in the Bronx. They were kind of early career mentors. They're the ones that actually said, if you want to do this, you need to go back to school. Thank you, Regina. And Ron Himes at the St. Louis Black Rep, of course. And my professors, that kind of are sitting sometimes on my shoulders when I'm drafting, when I'm trying to figure out the best composition for a challenging venue. And I'll name, of course, Lee Rand, John Conklin, Lowell Detweiler, Paul Steinberg from New York University. And of course, Eduardo and so many others that had an impact into how I developed my craft and my practice.
Cool. It's funny, just to comment on what you just said, having your professor sitting on your shoulder. Jason, Bill Mintzer still in my head every once in a while saying, I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
That's a good one. That's the usual comment, right?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Okay. Are you sure you want to send that in?
Yeah.
Well, Regina, we'll stick with you. What is your approach to teaching design?
Oh my God!
I will say that we can spend 2 hours on this question, but like it's if you can blurb it in the way you have to put it in a brochure. How about that? Is that fair?
I don't know if I can make it sound that sexy, but
I will give it a go, Regina.
I'll give it a go. I would say that I teach creativity, authorship, and collaboration. Creativity when it comes to starting from scratch, the act of creating and that kind of requires a certain amount of rigor. When it comes to authorship, it has to do with, let's say, accountability and also ownership, right? Ownership of the work that you're putting forth for on stage, and also accountability in terms of that stage picture. You have a responsibility to that. And then in terms of collaboration, that exchange that of course moves us, the one that we're most heartbroken about right now being isolated, which is that exchange right before, during, and after an opening that keeps us just fired up, that ritual of exchanging ideas and prodding at it a little bit along the way is and you develop as a professor, as a teacher, different ways in different exercises. When I started, honestly, I had no idea that it was going to be so hard, so challenging. But I think, like you've set up, you've learned from your mentors. You know what works, and we trust your gut that you're going to ask the right questions to your students and prepare for the dynamic, hopefully exciting dialogue that could happen after. But yes, I would simplify it into creativity, authorship, and collaboration as the big pillars of the study of design.
Collaboration has definitely been a reoccurring theme in the 30 episodes that we've done. Well, 29. The Christmas episode didn't really have a theme except being drunk. Jason, what about you? What is your approach to teaching design?
Well, I love what you were just saying about the ownership and authorship. I usually use a kind of silly Spider-Man quote: "With great power comes great responsibility."
Yes, I know that.
You do have a lot of power of forwarding thought and being empaths. That it's important to recognize that responsibility. That's one of the main things that I do talk about. I tend to approach the idea of how I teach them, like I want to crack open their way of thinking where they can approach a story and its themes with in an abstract way, with like abstract visual metaphor, much like what we were taught with Bill Mincer, and figure out how best for them to communicate that to a group of people. And whether that's about communicating with their collaborators or eventually having it evolve into the implementation of a design, it's important to be able to understand that level of communication across the board. And for me, it always goes back to your collaborators end up being your first audience, and then your audience is the next one. So if you're able to give that first audience that feeling, then you can push on to giving it to everybody else.
Awesome. Jennifer, what is your approach?
Yes, well, when I went to Yale, I went thinking that I would teach always. And of course, I very quickly found out that there was only one way I could teach, and that was my way. And so I spent the first year of 3 making sure that all students learn very carefully my way. And then I spend the next 2 years of their time there encouraging them, provoking them to find their own way. And I'm rewarded by the fact that most of my students don't all do it the same way.
Yeah.
Well, you should say Jennifer Tipton's class, My Way or the Highway, for the first 2 years. Sign up if you want.
Bill Belichick.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, what about you?
I teach performance, and I teach performance to everyone. And I teach them that the visual part of performance is as much directing as any other part of performance is directing, and that we're really all directors creating work together. And I teach them to try to find, or it's funny because what Jennifer said is very close, which is to help them find their own aesthetic and give them the skills and tools that they need to make that successful. So I'm very much trying to find their individual voice at the same time that I'm trying to give them the skills to work with other people. Yeah. But I think the big thing is that I teach a lot of performance classes to all the students, the directors and the writers, and I really believe in trying to get them to teach. People talk about collaboration, but really collaboration or critique are loaded words. Collaboration classes are usually a disaster. They tell people to trust each other, which why would you do that? And also you want to be in a constant state of unrest.
Yeah.
That's kind of the nature of our business. And so teaching them to be really comfortable with that and to be constantly talking about what they see, not trying to critique people but to really talk about what they see, what they experienced in each other's work, because that's what we do professionally. If I'm working with Jennifer or whatever, I'm always asking, so what do you see? What is it that makes it click?
Yeah. Well, Chris, let's stay with you. Here's a question that Mike Baldessari, I don't know if you all know Mike Baldessari, I'm going to credit him for asking this question. It's something that he and I have spoken about for years. How much do you talk to your student about what it takes to be a professional designer? Like all of the art and creativity aside, what it means to actually be a freelance artist who in essence is running their own small business. Is that part of design school?
Yes, but I think in my case, it was a discovery much, much later in life, because I really focused in the theater, and maybe I just didn't have to because of the time. And as I was teaching, I realized that most of my students were not going to be able to survive economically. I was not born independently wealthy, so I had to make a living, and most of my students are like that. And because of that, I've decided to think about design more broadly, and to think about the work that they might do more broadly, and to include that in the way of thinking. You know, when I said about teaching performance, it can be applicable to anything in a way, but you have to teach them to think about the openness with which they might enter the profession and do everything. That was actually what Robin Wagner said to me when I was assisting him. He said, "Don't turn anything down." Was his mantra. But I think what I'm most proud of is that a lot of my students are still working in the theater, but they're also doing it because they have commercial work that's supporting that, whether it's themed entertainment or film or whatever it is. They have a way to make a living in order to how do we deal with the addiction to this thing we call theater.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jason, when you're just starting out in full-time teaching, are you going to tell people how to deduct things from their taxes? I mean, like how much of running, your life is your responsibility, do you think? Where does it end?
Yeah, I mean, we have a class that's a career seminar that it has some elements of that we're actually trying to evolve to add more to, because I do think it is important. And to understand the models with which you'll be working in. I mean, it's so vastly different to be doing, a small off-Broadway theater to a large Lord theater to a Broadway commercial production. The things that you have to deal with, whether it's personally just in terms of getting paid and how you manage that, or how it is managing with those different groups and the different structures of those groups. I think it really is kind of a two-part question. So we're trying to add as much of that as possible into that separate class.
Yeah. The reason I bring this question in is because I was not. I mean, I didn't know any of these things, and it took me years to figure out what I actually was doing. Jennifer, how about you? What do you guys do?
Yeah. Yes, well, we do have a separate class and seminar week for such a subject. I am certainly not qualified to deal with it at all. What I find is important to talk about is why lighting designers are artists, because so many people feel that they are not artists. And so I like to explain why and how we are.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
Can I interject one little thing?
Yes.
Light and sound create space. I've had directors say to me that the sound is more important than what I put on stage, and the light is too. So it is a really interesting thing that Jennifer just.
It really does all work together. Everyone.
Collaboration.
Regina, how about you?
Yeah, I think similar to Jason, we have carved some time in the curriculum to really devote to these conversations, how to prepare, how to do monthly budget, and I think when does it make sense to become part of the union? How long should you wait? What kind of projects? I think I think on our end. Because we're an undergraduate program, we're trying to teach them and remind them that they should diversify, right? They are young. They're still coming into their own, trying to figure out who they are in the field or who they want to be. So the more that they expand, the more, let's say, the diversity of projects will come in handy as they kind of build toolkit, whether they takes them back to go to grad school or keeps them in the workforce, but they just need a little bit of everything. And we talk about how, how to invoice for their work, but it's tricky. Those conversations are always tricky.
Sure. As Jennifer said, as an artist, as a designer, that's not necessarily what you want to teach, but it's nice that someone does.
It's part of the conversation. And of course, I think in my end, especially my colleagues that teach down south and also in New York, I think everybody's really good at telling stories. I didn't know this, and this is how it had an impact with the contract, so you should do this instead.
I feel like we're all getting a little bit better about communicating with each other. I think for a long time there was a wall, but I think we talk a little more. All right. It's time to talk a little bit about, finally, 40 minutes in, COVID and how you're handling that. So, Regina, let's start with you. We've talked a lot on the show about the expectations that you had at the beginning of the year, how it ended last year, where things stood at the beginning of the semester, and all of the planning and the speculation. I guess I can ask this a couple of ways. What was your school's plan and how's it been going? But can you give us your version of the state of education during COVID, how it relates to your school, Regina?
Oh my gosh.
I know it's a lot.
Well, I will say that we had 7 different versions of a plan in March. And then none of them worked by the time we hit, and our quarter goes into June. And then we spent the summer devising a whole other, how we were going to potentially be together on stage with 6 feet apart, and how we were going to wash our hands, how many people by room. And of course, none of that worked either. So we ended up having the school decided very last minute that nobody was going to be in any of the buildings on campus. So all of a sudden, everything was back online, which has its challenges for courses that demand that you be in the same space together. For scenic design, model making online, drafting online, which is not terrible. Of course, we discovered that. But some of the other aspects of, scenic painting and all that, and of course, lighting and sound, being bombarded by different kinds of demands from productions that originally were going to be on stage. All of a sudden, one play becomes a radio play. The next production becomes a Zoom play with some very elaborate design in the background. Nobody wanted to be outside because everybody was very much afraid. We didn't know what we know now about COVID, and still, if anything, I take my hat off to everybody because we've remained flexible and engaged, and we've tried to ride the wave as the wave changes. Yeah.
And Chris, how about you?
Well, our CalArts early on made the decision to go remote for the whole year, which was good because it allowed them to focus on supporting the faculty and the students, and also had the benefit for us as faculty that we could rethink knowing it would be our reality long enough for it to be meaningful.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use only one class as an example because I think what I've found during the pandemic has demonstrated that the old adage that adversity is a great driver of creativity. And I found in one class that I teach, which is called Performance by Design, which is one of these performance classes that I was talking about. It's to all the MFA ones. And all the faculty said I should postpone it, that I shouldn't teach it, that how could I teach that class because it was so much about devising and working in the room together. And I said, I can't delay it. The students need to work together right away. The MFA ones have to be in a room together. And what was fascinating is that it was this thing that I said about out of adversity comes great creativity. And I can't describe it, obviously, what they did specifically, but they made amazing things. And because the class is open, I don't say what they should do. They make individual groups, small group and large group projects where in a way they're supposed to be exploring their interests. And not exploring mine. as a way for them to start to develop their aesthetic. And in doing that, because there was adversity, they were working really hard together, and they were critiquing each other in such a deep way that, frankly, I said to them, it was a stronger class, oddly enough, for having to deal with all the obstacles. And they did things with form and structure that I know that after the pandemic's going to resonate. You know, I think one of the things that people forget is that the question for the rest of the century is going to be, where were you during the pandemic?
And what did you do? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and then so some of us were protesting, thank God. And sorry, not to interject politics, but I mean that that I do think that, you know, this is going to be the question. And I think the students who have stuck it out also have something to offer them.
Yeah. Well, creative people want to create, and there's, that's the right age. The students are there to create. So the ones that did stick it out, I'm sure, are getting a lot out of it.
Yeah,
Jason,
can I say something quickly?
Please, yes.
That is, not knowing whether or not we were going to be online was anxiety provoking for everybody, and the students just shut down. So that was very smart of CalArts. Absolutely.
Jason, how about you in your school? And also as a lighting teacher, there are more opportunities to do some, previs type things and virtual designing.
And we did. We had a weird situation where we were back and forth in terms of online and live, and so we did approach some things from the point of view of creating them virtually, and we explored a lot of those. But we did end up being in a situation where we were able to have streamed productions, where we had 2 productions in the fall that, three actually, including the dance production, where it was masked, socially distanced, and no audience. Everything was streamed, and it ended up being really kind of amazing. I mean, it was really challenging and worrisome for all of us. Like, obviously that puts a lot of responsibility on us, and we didn't end up having any issues. I think we ended up having a couple of students who had ended up having some symptoms, but it was even before we got into production. And then it ended up being fine. But it created all these challenges that everybody, whether it was the directors, the designers, all came up with these amazing ways of still telling a story with all of these confines. Which was really it was awesome to be a part of, and it was really fun from the lighting point of view too, to now talk to the students about. There's something we approached a little bit before, but now we really looked into was, okay, how do we light for the camera? How do we show?
Another opportunity.
And it was kind of a little fortuitous in that way, because I have a feeling that streaming isn't leaving us anytime soon. So it's something that to have those skills, I think, is going to be helpful moving forward.
Who knows? We stopped predicting the future on this show about 3 months ago. Jennifer, how about you and Yale?
So Yale made a very unusual decision sort of early on, before sort of in the beginning of the summer, that they would become, rather than a 3-year program, they would offer a 4-year program and take all the money that they would spend on productions in this year and give it to the students for their 4th year. So we all went virtual. The students are on campus, living on campus, but the faculty is not. We do not have on-site classes. There are 6 lighting designers in the program at any given time, 2 a year, but there are like 40 in a year who are taking lighting. So we arranged for each of these to have a kit, 4 lights with various color, with dimmers, etc., so that we could all be looking at the same thing when we talk about color or angle or whatever. But it means, the advantage is that everybody, in looking at a plot, everybody can see it well, rather than crowding around in the room and trying to see over everybody's shoulders. So we go deeply into the paperwork that is involved. And next year, we will go deeply into the actual thing in the studio theaters as well as on stage. We hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing that everyone has every team. I mean, and now I'm talking about the 20 teachers we've had on. There's a different approach and a different experience, and it's all working. I mean, and the students are still there. People, and I don't know what your experiences are. We used to talk about whether people were dropping out of school. They weren't. So that's pretty amazing. Also, people were still, and the students were still getting a lot out of it, and it sounds like they still are. And that's great that everyone had their own lighting kit. Amazing. What a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, Jennifer, we'll stick with you. Students applying for next year are concerned that because of the pandemic, they won't have enough in their portfolio. How are you taking this into consideration, and what would you say to them as they're at home, stressing out about it?
Yes, well, first of all, Yale is not taking any new students next year because of the 4-year program.
Yeah.
But I do understand the anxiety, but we're all in this together. Everybody understands, and there is no reason to be anxious about it, I feel. And we'll make sure that every young lighting designer understands that there's nothing going on.
Yeah. It's all, as you said, it's all around.
Does anybody want to add into that, or is that kind of everybody's approach?
I will say that the portfolio is going to start looking very different. It's going to be a very different group of images, projects, and some of them, there's going to be different kinds of paperwork documenting or archiving process. And I think we're all, as faculty, as practitioners, as community members, we're all ready to see what it's going to be. I think there's, we're heartbroken and all that, but there's a little bit of excitement as these projects change and become other things. I think
lighting designers have always had trouble with portfolios, and this is going to mean just more trouble with the portfolio.
Show everything.
Exactly.
Show everything, because there's a tendency for people to think that they should edit in that process. They shouldn't. And also, they shouldn't think as much as they're clearly thinking too much, because I've been looking at student portfolios and they're as good, if not better, than most years, because they've had more time to prepare. Actually, I've actually found that their portfolios are stronger this year. And so, they shouldn't worry. I mean, I think COVID causes people to worry. So no worrying and a lot of work. Substitute work for worrying.
Jason.
And I also feel like to jump on that, Chris, that everybody tends to always gravitate towards having to have the final product shown. And I want to see the process. I want to see how you got there. That's what's really interesting to me. Like, the final product is great, but to see, that you actually went through something to get there, a journey is really, that's the important work that I want to see.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, so Jennifer, it's hard as you said, it's difficult for all of us. How do you keep people motivated and inspire creativity for yourself and for your students? Is that something that you have to do, or is it natural?
I don't know. I think it's natural. Everybody, I do find students more argumentative this year.
There might be a lot of reasons for that.
Exactly. But there's nothing wrong with that. It's good, stimulating.
Yeah. Chris, how about you?
So I think that, well, ask me the question again. Sorry.
It's okay. No, that's fine. How do you motivate and inspire creativity for yourself and for your students? Is that something that you have to do, or is it organic? Is it just happening as it usually is?
I think that it is sort of the funny aspect of teaching that our biggest job, actually, I think, is to get people to believe in themselves. And that's a tricky business, because you don't do that. We've learned through, because I have daughters now that are 18, you don't do that by giving them ribbons and medals and stuff. So the only way to get them to believe in themselves is by convincing them to do a lot of work, and that through the work, they will grow to believe in themselves. And so I spend a lot of time a little bit like a drill sergeant. I guess that's a terrible thing to say, but just really keeping after them and about their interests, and keep asking them, I know this is what you said you want to do, and I don't mean necessarily being a scenic designer. It's often that they want to actually secretly be a director or something else.
Right.
Really getting them to focus on those interests and pursuing them with great rigor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Regina or Jason, do you want to add something to that?
I think I'm sometimes I find myself that I'm a little bit of a cheerleader more often, and I get really close to the camera, and I'm like, you can do it. Do you see that one? There's one more. One more after that, and we'll be there. We'll get it. But I would say, I think they've been really good about teaching me about self-care.
Yeah, sure.
Through this pandemic, I would say. It's like, no, we're going to take a moment. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. Let's take a moment and then come back and with really targeted work. And it's been lovely, actually. I'm very grateful.
Jason.
I totally agree on the self-care point. Like, it's been kind of amazing to I had one class in particular where we would always have like a little check-in at the beginning before we would start talking, and it would always be like, okay, how's everybody doing? Are we good? Is everybody feeling okay? Is there any stress? Is there any, and to have those conversations kind of started off a little stilted, but slowly became more open as we went, as people became more comfortable with it. And that was amazingly helpful for all of us.
Yeah.
But I think overall, in terms of finding inspiration, especially this year, which was there's so many things that were challenging to us, there's also so much to be inspired by. I think that what we've been seeing happening in our country, that the strength that some people have shown is really just incredible, and something that we talked about a lot and shared, and gave us purpose to really move and push forward to make sure that we were ready to tell the next stories that needed to be told.
Great.
Yeah.
Good segue. I will say, Drew, before we move on, there's a comment here from Sven Ortel, and it's not really a question, it's more of a comment, but I want to say to Sven, we want you to be a guest on the show sometime. So come on, we'll talk. And we'll have projection designers on soon, and we should talk. All right, Drew. Moving on.
Before we move on to the roundtable, when Chris mentioned drill sergeant, I just got to say this real quick. My grandpa was a drill sergeant in the Army during the Vietnam War, and I was raised by him and my grandma, and he would check my homework every day, and he would erase my entire paper and tell me to work on my penmanship. So when you said drill sergeant, it brought back a flashback. And then I learned to just go outside until he went in to watch TV, so he wouldn't check my homework anymore.
You and Susan Boyd Park.
It's time for running.
Yeah. Susan Boyd. She always said that's how she became successful, just like you, right? All that,
Drew, you should write a play.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I'm going to. But before I do that, let's get started on
Jeff's Roundtable Rapid Fire.
There we go. All right, Jeff, let's do it. Rapid fire.
Come back after that.
It's gonna be quick here. So we're running out of time. So let's make these responses super quick.
So we're starting with Chris. Chris, favorite thing to do when you aren't working?
Climb mountains.
Regina.
I do a lot of binge watching on Netflix and Hulu.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah. Jason.
Cook, eat, and drink with my family.
Oh, Jen.
Read, listen to music, and cook.
Jennifer, staying with you. A skill needed to do what you do.
I don't know. Staying calm.
Jason. Yeah, good one.
Diplomacy in the same vein.
Yeah. Regina.
Still very connected. Deep listening.
Chris.
Imagine in your head.
Yeah. Chris, let's stay with you. Maybe we can pass this one if you don't want to answer it. Best excuse you were given for why a student didn't do an assignment or was late on an assignment, or an excuse you once gave when you were a student.
Never. No excuses.
No excuses. Great. Regina.
I don't know if I want to be a designer. Unquote.
Wow.
I feel like I've heard people say that. Sorry, Jason.
They had uploaded the assignment to the wrong class and then deleted it from their Dropbox because they were out of space.
Very good.
Bravo.
Nice.
Jennifer.
A car ran over my carrot.
Right. Yeah, there you go. The dog ate my homework. Jennifer, something you learned from your students.
Oh, about technology constantly. What's new?
How to Zoom. Jason.
Social media.
Yeah. God. Regina.
I ditto. Yeah, social media.
Chris.
Everything. They still surprise me.
Yeah. Chris, something you know now that you wish you knew at the start of your career.
You can be whatever you want to be, even if you're not trained for it. You'll figure it out. You'll figure out what you need along the way.
Yeah.
There have been a
I'm
lot
going
of
to write a
versions of
play.
the
I'm
answer.
going to write a play.
That's right. There you go.
Yeah.
She's going to write a play.
Yeah.
Regina.
That you can come at the work with all of you, including a bringing culture, good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. Jason.
Oh, I'm going to get really practical. Taxes.
Yeah. I kind of asked that before, sort of.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to make sure that we start teaching it.
That's great. Jennifer.
That it's thrilling to be in a dark theater, turning on lights and turning them off.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Jennifer, two-part question. Hardest part of your job as a teacher and also as a professional?
Oh, I don't know. Focusing.
Yeah, gosh, in so many ways. Jason.
As a teacher, meetings. As a professional, meetings.
Yeah. Regina.
Oh my God. I think there's I will say deep listening again, just because it has to come, it comes with patience and respect. I think my students teach me a lot about that, but sometimes it's hard to be in the moment.
Chris.
Administration, which includes my taxes.
Great. Chris, the most rewarding part of your job?
Having an idea. Having an idea.
Yeah. Regina.
Having ideas.
I agree with Chris.
Jason.
Making someone feel something that they didn't think they could feel before.
Cool. Jennifer.
Seeing the successes of my students.
Yeah. Jennifer, something you love about what you do, which could also be the same answer, but something you love about what you do.
Oh, it is. I adore teaching. I adore being with young people.
Jason.
The people in the collaboration.
Regina.
I love when there's a foundation of respect, how we challenge each other to do better and be better.
Chris.
I like seeing other people succeed, so I agree with Jennifer.
Well done on the rapid part of the rapid fire. I have to say that you guys are the best so far. We didn't start this until about halfway through, but well done. Chris, we're going to stick with you. What do you miss most about live entertainment being shut down?
Well, sharing ideas, just sharing in general.
Yeah.
I mean, we do it via Zoom, but it's not the same.
It's not this. Yeah. Tired of Zoom. Regina.
Yeah, I would say similarly, just to add on to that, the ritual of beginning, the middle, and the end, where we take everything to the bar or to the restaurant and we can just break bread together and discuss.
Yep. Jason.
Yeah, those things and added to that, like being in a room with the people that I care about and work with and just like actually being able to hug somebody.
Yeah. Jennifer.
Yeah, the improvisational and spontaneous way that it is when you're with real people in a room.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we're sprinting to the end. Jason, let's go to you. Aside from teaching, which I know all of you have been busy with, what has COVID life been like for you? Have you done anything that you've ignored that you're finally getting to? Anything you want to get to? Are you cooking something you never cooked before? New hobbies? Has anything surprised you?
I mean, I've always been a little bit of a cook, so I've been making a lot of things.
We have pictures.
Oh my gosh! You have my bagels, which of course, being in South Carolina, I am dying for New York bagels. So these are the closest thing I could find. It was a recipe in the New York Times. They were amazing.
You know what's funny is when my wife was pregnant during this pandemic, I told Al and Jeff I'm going to go get my wife a bagel, and one of them teased me about not knowing what a bagel really is if I don't get it in New York.
Yeah, yeah, nothing like it. Yeah.
Was there another picture from Jason? I feel like
there was a handful. I also have been making some furniture. I made a console table.
That looks great.
That's poplar and pine with a resin top. I did a detail wall in our kitchen.
Are you kidding?
Well, come out to Vegas. My wife's been wanting me to do that for a long time.
Yeah.
Jennifer, how about you? Anything that you've
I'll just say I made bagels yesterday, but no, it's an extraordinary time when you can't see past the rupture and you have no idea what's coming next.
Yeah.
Chris, well said. But
I've been trying to keep my family sane, particularly my daughters, who one is in her first year of college at University of Connecticut, but is remote. And my other is a senior in high school, and she's remote. So I built a she shed. We did it together. You must have some other things. That's the beginning.
Is that you supervising?
I have a beer. Yes, I'm supervising with my beer. And then you can probably show the final, because I think I sent you a picture of that's the inside.
That's beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
And the outside, I think you have a picture of the outside.
Oh
Oops,
my
there it is.
Wow.
Yeah, it's on the house.
Great, Chris.
And I also put in some miniature golf. It's COVID relief. I call it COVID relief. Everything around my house now is designed for COVID relief.
Yeah.
And I've always been the cook in my family, but what's interesting is now my whole family is cooking, which is a great COVID relief for me.
Yeah.
Awesome. Speaking of food, let's go to Regina.
This might sound silly, and of course, in conversations with my students about food and who's cooking what and doing what, I finally decided that I'm going to tackle this problem I have with vegetables. I don't eat enough vegetables. I've never learned how to eat vegetables, so I'm teaching myself how to eat my favorite foods, but with more vegetables in it. And so from chicken soup to my bolognese sauce, just tons of vegetables that I don't see or that are somewhere in there, but it still tastes delicious. That has been a wonderful task. And of course, these are suspiros or meringues. They're crispy on the outside, very soft on the inside. I'm sorry, no vegetables on this one.
That would be so strange. On that one. Drew, it's so funny. Like the early shows that we were doing, early episodes, were basically just talking about what people were building and hobbies, and then we realized, that was when we were having fun, when we thought we were going to be back in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. But it is fun. It's nice to see that that everyone's doing things.
Yes.
One more question. Did everyone answer that? Everyone answered that.
Yes.
Regina, staying with you, what advice would you give to the current graduating class as they're stepping out into the world?
I would say to be patient, to be confident that they've done good work, targeted, and also very much that it's not all, disposable, that they will be okay. Just be patient.
Yeah. Chris.
Be bold. Just get out there and make something.
Yeah. Jason.
Yeah, I think along the same lines, don't start your life discouraged. Pay attention to what's happening. There's going to be a huge ramp up when things do open up, and just pay attention to where things are happening.
Yeah. And Jennifer.
Yes, be open. There's a whole new world waiting for us.
Yeah.
If we had a music track, I would cue A Whole New World from Aladdin right there.
That's a great way to end it. Before we sign off, is there anything any of you want to add or retract or clarify before we move on?
I just want to say it's so nice to be with my colleagues here. I haven't seen Jennifer in a while, and this is fabulous, Jennifer. Yes. And everybody else. It's just great. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
It's big part of why we do this. So
yeah,
great having you guys. You were amazing.
Thank you for being a resource.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for making me super hungry with this photo. I'm going to go have dinner. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I think I saw a comment in there from somebody was watching from South Africa. So I guess next week I'll brush up on my Afrikaans for next episode. Thank you again, everybody. This was great. That hour blew by like we said it would. But thank you again. Everybody will be back next week on Sunday again. So we'll see everybody next week. Thank you again, Jennifer, Chris, and Regina and Jason. It was great. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.